The L663 Defender began production in 2019 after a 3-year hiatus as Land Rover transitioned from a vehicle that had been the backbone of the brand for decades and moved into the next generation. The first deliveries were made in 2020 and the D7X platform, an aluminium unibody, was used, taking the Defender away from the body-on-frame chassis of the previous model. Lead designer Jerry McGovern returned for the Defender after his success with the Land Rover Freelander and experience leading the team on the third-generation Range Rover during its evolution in 2010, to name a few of his accolades. While the world questions the future of propulsion, Land Rover made sure that buyers would have a wide range of choices, from a diesel to a V8 and even a plug-in hybrid, making sure that Defender would have a powertrain to suit every major market across the globe. As many of you that follow car production will know, the Defender is made in Slovakia, a popular choice for many European manufacturers for dependable production. The transition away from the UK will be sad for some, however, the Solihull plant isn't standing down. They've been at capacity for several years now, pumping out the latest generation Range Rovers, while Halewood continues to produce both the Land Rover Discovery Sport and Range Rover Evoque. Now, I'd be remiss throughout this guide to not mention that early Land Rover Defenders did have some issues. Land Rover worked on these and they overhauled the engines after about a year or 18 months of production. Anecdotally, this did make an improvement to reliability. Only time will tell, obviously, for the future how this goes on. But if you're someone that's not willing to troubleshoot your own issues and you're not too confident in working on your own vehicle, I would look at a 2022 onwards. If you're a bit more confident, you're not so worried, you're used to Land Rovers, you can look at those early years, but if the budget allows, 2022 seems to be where some improvements for some earlier issues really kicks in. The Defender is sold in the 90, 110 and 130, with lengths starting at 4.58 metres or 180 inches. The 110 adds 2 doors and lengthens this to 5.02 metres or 198 inches, while the longest variant is the 130, which grows to 5.36 metres or 211 inches. Used buyers and new buyers will want to note that the 110 model has been the most popular model, and so if residual values or the widest options is top of your list of importance, then that will be the model you'll want to look at first. Tow ratings are generally 3,500 kilograms or 7,716 pounds. However, plug-in hybrid models drop this to 3,000 kilograms, and the official rating for the 130 model does have some variations of tow capacity across the world. While I've noted the lengths, the vehicle's height is listed differently depending on whether the model has coil spring suspension or air suspension. The height differences are minor, with the shortest being a 110 model for comparison is 196.7 centimeters or 77.4 inches, then 197 centimeters or 77.5 inches with coil springs on a 90 model. The air suspension 90 model is 197.4 centimeters or 77.7 inches. This does affect ground clearance. The coil spring 90 has a 22.6 centimeter or 8.9 inches of ground clearance, while the air suspension has a maximum range of 29.1 centimeters or 11.5 inches. We will talk about the engines later, but first I'll clarify the packs. In most markets, the 4 options for a Defender setup will be Adventure, Urban, Explorer and Country. There are then specifications starting with the S as the most basic level. The choices from here do vary depending on country, with Australia, the USA and Canada streamlining the options due to demand. For the UK and Europe, after an S is the Dynamic SE and Dynamic HSE in all body sizes, whereas this is limited to the 110 for the others mentioned. After that is the XS model, which is the limit for most countries without stepping into a V8, although the X Dynamic SE and X Dynamic HSE is again offered in Europe, while others will likely have the split between a 110 and a 130. Those wanting an OCTA model, the latest wild version of the Defender, will be a 110. There are several special editions and limited market editions within this, but this guide hopefully outlines the most common ones in your market. Now, speaking of special editions, the one you are most likely to see is the 75th anniversary. That was sold as a 90 and a 110. There was also a Bond edition because the vehicle was in the James Bond movie. Only 300 of those were made, but they do get the 5-litre supercharged V8. If you're interested in a commercial version, these are limited to select markets and will be a 90 or 110. In Europe, these are classed as a small truck or van in the Euro N1 class, making them tax deductible in the UK. Moving on to safety, and no real surprise in such a large vehicle, a full 5 stars at Euro NCAP, although the score of 71% pedestrian safety was better than you may expect from such a large vehicle. Moving on to common faults, and a reminder that as there were more reported issues on the first year similar to most cars, I will mention if the fault is generally reported only on the 2020 or 2021 cars. So I just want to jump in here quickly and say, after nearly 200 videos, I've never jumped in before common faults to put an advisory. I'm doing it on this one time for this one car because before making this video, I've gone out, checked what other people are doing, seen what they've reported, and I've realised there is a bit of a theme with the Defender, and that's that people are researching a Defender, looking at the 2020 issues, and then reporting them as if they affect every single Defender going. I've also seen a few videos where people are, as far as I can tell, just making things up. And I understand that has an advantage for them. They can do a more extreme thumbnail and title. I'm going to try and be honest and fair. I have no reason to lie to the advantage of Land Rover, but I feel it's unfair to you if I tell you problems that just don't exist, because you may be making a buying decision on what you watch in this video. So what's about to come is a fair assessment of some of the reported issues. If I miss something, apologies. I'm sure owners will add it in the comments if I do, but this is a fair list of things that I actually could find reported from both owners and warranty claims. 2020 and some 2021 cars report windscreen trims and the rubber on the sidebars detaching or peeling. This problem was compounded by poor repairs at dealers. If you buy a car with this issue out of warranty, find a Land Rover specialist to get it sorted quickly. Separate to this were 2020 built cars with body panels out of alignment, especially the doors and front wings. In 2021 into 2022, Land Rover appears to have got on top of this issue, and conversely have lots of reports from later owners saying that this is the best Land Rover build quality that they had seen after owning several different models. Again, for 2020 built cars, the audio system has suffered with audio issues, including the stereo not functioning or one of the speakers not operating. Dealers were able to resolve the issue with software issues roughly 50% of the time, while the other half would usually have a hardware replacement under warranty. This problem was most reported between 0 to 18-month-old cars. Sunroofs leaking seem to be a fairly common complaint. I was able to find 2023 cars reporting this, although it certainly was not every car, and the complaint appears a higher proportion than similar models. Usually up to about 2% of cars with sunroofs will report a problem within the first 3 years. Sunroof drains are usually the fault. On the Defender, this appears to be about 3 to 5% of cars, so still relatively rare in the wider numbers, but a higher proportion than you would expect. Unfortunately, dealers did sometimes take more than one appointment to resolve this. Specialists appeared a bit more confident with the issue though. Drivers' doors refusing to lock have been reported for in 2020 to 2022. Interestingly, the other locks are generally reliable. It appears the lock issue is well understood by Land Rover though, and most are fixed at the first visit to the dealer. One perplexing issue, which doesn't appear to be in any particular year or specification, was cracked windscreens. Many owners reported to their dealer that nothing had hit the windscreen, it had just cracked after a variety of events that shouldn't have broken it. Bizarrely, this issue was spread across years, and although rare, my temptation is to suggest a poor repair done to the trim or seal around the windscreen may cause this. A top tip is simply just to check if it isn't cracked in a corner when buying. They are expensive to replace and not covered under warranty. Another issue on 2020 cars was a fault in the modules controlling the fan and air conditioning, rendering the system unusable. Land Rover figured out this issue before the end of 2020 and repaired vehicles reporting the problem and adjusted manufacturing from there. By far and away the biggest complaint of Defender owners hasn't been the car. Instead, there appears to be a Land Rover lottery of dealer service across the world. Some people are happy with the service, others have said it was the reason for exchanging the car for a different brand after a small issue reoccurred and was not fixed. Serial Land Rover owners have long found a specialist that they trust and stick with them. Anecdotally, those maintaining their cars at a local specialist appear to report fewer issues, but this was not something I could get a wider data point on. Headlights refusing to work on 2020 and some 2021 cars was a big annoyance to owners. If they were lucky, this was just the daylight running oval, which would fail so that the car could still be driven when the dipped beam headlights were left on, but some suffered complete failure and Land Rover attempted a repair, which worked less than half of the time and resulted in a return to the dealer and a hardware replacement. As with most newer cars, software updates can cause a problem if they are not completed. This can happen due to a signal loss, among other reasons. Dealers can usually rectify this problem quickly, and as software updates improve the system, it seems less of an issue. Looking through owner reports, it's quite amazing to view how different some ownership experiences have been, but overall, there was a general positive vibe in owners' forums on the reliability so far, with many people mentioning that they had zero issues after several years of ownership. I say this with no doubt that there will be a comment below this video saying that these vehicles blow up every day of the week and twice on Sundays. All I can report is what owners say though. Moving on to the recalls, and a reminder that if you want to support the channel, you can now join our channel memberships. In 2021, there was a single recall for a missing sensor on a batch of 2020 vehicles for the front passenger occupancy, resulting in no indication if a passenger was not wearing a seatbelt. In 2022, there was a recall for the front seatbelt pre-tensioner due to incorrect fitment of the tensioner tube. In 2023, there were 4 recalls, the first for a water pump pulley, as early parts were found susceptible to breaking. The second was for 3-litre models, in which a small batch was identified to have a blocked oil gallery. Third was front axle casing failure on a limited run of vehicles, and then a recall on plug-in hybrid models due to a fault found in the engine not taking over from the battery when required. In 2024, there were 5 recalls. The first 2 were to add additional security features to cars, as Land Rover acted to bolster vehicle security systems against modern theft techniques. The third was due to a faulty injector clamp, then a brake pipe recall due to an incorrect routing at factory on a batch of vehicles, and then the 6-cylinder engines had a recall oil filter housing against a wider batch due to reports of cracking. Next up are the engines, and I note that all are offered with an 8-speed automatic ZF, and it is clear that Land Rover are not intending a manual model. A 2-speed transfer case is also fitted. A quick note that while all engines are Ingenium, aside from the 2 V8 models, one of which is the 5-litre supercharged JLR engine, the other is a BMW 4.4, but we'll start with the diesels. Early diesel models have a 2-litre diesel Ingenium engine badged either D200 or D240, producing 197 and 237 brake horsepower with an official average of 31.7 miles per gallon or 8.91 litres per 100 kilometres. This is the engine you've all heard about online, and how between 2015 and 2018 it got a poor reputation which still lasts today. The revisions in 2018 and 19 mean the Defender doesn't have some of the failures as earlier Evokes and Discovery Sports with this engine. However, they aren't completely immune. But be wary of people telling you that they break every 5 minutes. The faults that had early warranty work were turbochargers, oil dilution and occasional timing chains. However, as a mild defence, looking at the actual claim rate, it is only just slightly higher than the industry average, so Land Rover certainly made improvements, but they also understood that the market just didn't want this engine in the Defender, and due to this in 2020, just a year after the engine arrived, it was phased out. The 3-litre Ingenium takes its place, even on the entry D200 model. Admittedly, the 2-litre does feel a bit out of step today in the Defender, a bit too slow with a bit too narrow torque fill for the vehicle's weight, and so while reliability may not be quite as bad as everyone says, it still would be the last place choice of engine. I know some owners may feel this is a little harsh, as the engine does get the job done, but this is more of a reflection of the better choices that Land Rover offered, rather than a blanket statement that the 2-litre is terrible and breaks all the time, as is often lazily stated in reviews. The 3-litre is where most diesel buyers will want to shop, adding a mild hybrid assistance and a slightly larger fuel tank to a partial redesign of the diesel models for the 2021 model year. Power is rated at 197, 247, 296 and 345 brake horsepower. Models are D200, D250, D300 and D350. In 2025 the model range is simplified in many markets to just the D250 and D350 models. Torque figures are higher on all 3-litre models compared to the 2-litre, even when comparing the old D240 model to the newer D200 3-litre. Fuel economy managed to keep the old score of 31.7 miles per gallon or 8.91 litres per 100 kilometres, and CO2 emissions also remain the same, showing just what an engineering achievement the 3-litre straight 6 is. The D200 is unpopular while the D250 takes the bulk of sales, but the D350 has a 0 to 62 time, or 0 to 100 km time, of 6.4 seconds, so if you're used to faster SUVs like the BMW X5 diesel, then the D300 and D350 may be a more appropriate choice. Looking at reliability, so far so good, but remember this is still a relatively new engine, so the jury will be out until we hit the 10-year marker. You can find horror stories online of damaged engines, but they are extremely isolated, and most owners say that this is the engine that turned the stigma of old Land Rover reliability around. There are reports of some early engine software faults that needed dealer intervention, plus a handful of warranty claims for failed parts, but overall these were not common faults. One tip though is if you live in a country where a DPF is mandatory emissions equipment, like the USA, the UK and most of Europe, the oil service intervals are quite long due to inevitable small amounts of oil dilution over time. Most specialists recommend changing the oil more frequent than Land Rover suggests. For most people that have the 3-litre diesel option, it will likely be the best overall option for a Defender. Moving on to the petrols, but a note that due to the 2025 updates, the naming may get a little bit confusing, so I'll do a quick outline. The P300 and P330E are 2-litre engines. The now defunct P400E was a 2-litre engine, whereas the P400 is a 3-litre. The P425, P500 and P525 is a 5-litre, and the OCTA model, or P635, is a 4.4 litre V8. Note that several engine options have been dropped in 2025 model year for several markets. The 2-litre engine is fitted as both a regular turbocharged engine and a hybrid. The P300 and P400E are initially launched, then a P300E is added in 2024. The regular P300 may be a good choice for those wanting a smaller engine but don't want a diesel. However, don't expect diesel fuel economy with 23.7 miles per gallon or 11.92 litres per 100 kilometres. The P300E has 296 brake horsepower. The P300E retains this power but adds 30 miles or 50 kilometres of electric range. The P400E manages the same electric range but ups power to 396 brake horsepower. Overall, the 2-litre petrol has far fewer problems and a better reputation than its diesel counterpart due to those early years when the 2-litre diesel was fitted in other cars. The petrol 4-cylinder isn't as smooth as the larger 6-cylinder models, but offers good torque across the rev range, and aside from a few early issues with the timing chains and turbos in a small number of early cars that were fixed under warranty, it has gained a strong reputation in the Defender. The trouble for most is that the 3-litre diesel offers more fuel economy and similar performance, though some of you won't have the option of a diesel or have decided you don't want one anymore. Then in that case the P300E and P400E hybrid make a strong argument that would be a second choice behind a 3-litre diesel. The P400 model was the least popular in most markets as the 3-litre petrol engine was smoother than the 2-litre, but for most the benefits ended there. The 396 brake horsepower was matched by the early P400E, and while fuel economy of 26.7 miles per gallon or 10.58 litres per 100 kilometres was higher than the 2-litre, in the real world it struggled to better that 2-litre model, although its mild hybrid powertrain with extra power meant this was the choice for those without a diesel model that wanted good towing power without stepping up to a V8. As these were rare in the Defender, complaints are very limited and owner reports are generally positive. This engine reminds me of the old 4.4 litre Jaguar V8 in the L322 Range Rover. It wasn't the most powerful or the most efficient, but generally was a good workhorse with less complexity than other options. This engine may be a mild hybrid 6-cylinder turbo, but overall it will be the one that owners living far from a Land Rover dealer or specialist may want to look at. Next is the P425 from 2025, then the P500 and P525. Horsepower won't surprise anyone at 419, 490 and 518 brake horsepower, although fuel economy may be a bit better than some expect at an official 19.7 miles per gallon or 14.34 litres per 100 kilometres. This engine has been in Land Rover and Range Rover vehicles for 15 years at this point and is very well understood. Over 10 years ago there were problems with timing chain guides that have since been updated, and the Defender will have the later iteration of the engine no matter which one you go for. For many, this is the peak of ultimate Land Rover and the lottery win car for those that love the mud more than the racetrack. The Defender holds on to the supercharged V8 in 2025 as one of those last supercharged SUVs in the world, making it something quite special, but increasingly rare. Running costs aside from fuel are higher on this engine than in almost all others, and so while it is considered a sturdy and reliable choice, it probably isn't the one for those that aren't looking to have the ultimate Land Rover experience. Now, saying that, there is one option left, and there is a reason why this may be the ultimate Defender, but a Land Rover purist won't find it quite as appealing as the supercharged model, and that is the BMW engine. Some may see this as a positive though, and Land Rover do have a history of putting BMW engines in their cars. The Defender OCTA, or P635, takes a 4.4 litre S68 lifted from the BMW M5, but without the plug-in battery, and delivering 626 brake horsepower to anyone brave enough to unleash it. I know all OCTA owners will have fuel economy at the top of their list, as they cross-shop this fire breather against the Mini Cooper, so hold on to your pants. It's 21.1 miles per gallon, or 13.39 litres per 100 kilometres. Is actually fairly respectable from the mild hybrid turbo V8. It's likely the OCTA won't sell in high enough numbers for any meaningful data on reliability to be pulled, but the 4.4 litre V8 has been with BMW for a while and has been revised and re-engineered over the years to make it very dependable. In this high output version, only time will tell, and as much as this is the ultimate Defender model, it will again be a choice for a small market. For many, the supercharged V8 is now only sold as a P425 model from 2025 to widen the gap between the two V8 offerings. Don't forget, the OCTA is a heavily reworked model and would take a whole video just to explain, but hydraulically linked suspension makes this model taller but reduces body roll. There's also increased steering response time, larger brakes, and overall it's not just the badge and stickers, and for those that really want to get off-road, possibly in a vast desert of the Middle East, this is the one for you. Now, I know many of you will mourn the old Defender and are unsure how this new car can really take its place, but what we have seen in the last 2 decades is a clear indicator from consumers that true, old-school off-roaders are a specialist market that need dedicated manufacturers committing all their resources to that niche. While Land Rover Defender buyers increasingly wanted a car that could drive up a mountain, but is optimised for the 99% that won't. And it isn't like we've lost the true off-road specialist vehicle. If anything, the death of the old Defender handed a market of off-road enthusiasts the chance to go one better. The success of the Grenadier is that they maximised a formula that didn't belong to Land Rover in the first place. We all know where this started, in the brave souls that went out in a new thing called a Jeep, which was a development of the Bantam company prototype and fought for what we have today. Clearly the world has moved on in many ways, but it's nice to see, whether with new tech or old levers, you can still get true off-roaders today, and that is a thing to celebrate.